what job is he negotiating for? What job do you think he'd want to have? So there's two jobs that are being thrown around, right? One job that's being thrown around, I saw your tweet 8 hours ago in which you said you are not, there's Whitlock and Carl Tucker are doing a podcast together. And Jason proposed, what if Bobby Kennedy chooses to become the CIA director and Trump appoints him as a CIA director, which is absolutely wild. Probably a lot of people that want to know what happened to his father and his uncle, they would want him to become the CIA director. And talk about one of the greatest storylines of all time. If the son and the nephew becomes the director of CIA versus being an AG, I see a good argument for both. Which one do you like?
I absolutely hate the idea of CIA director.
Why do you hate it?
It feels to me like flypaper. Like it seems narratively, oh my goodness, what a tremendous setback this would be for the deep state if Bobby Kennedy became the director of CIA. But here's what I think. The deep state fully understands that the director of Central Intelligence...
You're bursting my bubble. I don't like it right now.
I'm sorry
I'm not a fan of you right now. You're upsetting me right now.
I'm gonna earn it
Please,
back.
yeah.
The director of the Central Intelligence Agency is a political position. The deep state knows that it doesn't have complete control over that. And therefore, presumably, it has insulated the really important stuff so that no matter who gets into that office, they have no power to find where the bodies are buried. Second, I don't know what your sense is about the deep state, but I've done a lot of thinking about it. My feeling is that there's a conflict. People talk about two things when they use the term deep state. I think one of them is legitimate and the other one is a real thing, but it deserves a different term. Some people, when they say deep state, they mean the vast bureaucratic state that can't turn over every time there's a new administration, the people who keep the lights on, right? And that thing does have a lot of power in it, and it is not well regulated.
That's like Nancy saying, don't worry, he's just going to be there 4 to 8 years. We're going to come back and run it anyways. Don't worry about Bush. Don't worry about Trump. Don't worry about these guys. Yeah.
Right. So that's one version. I don't think that's the deep state. The deep state has a central element that makes it distinct. And the central element that makes the deep state distinct is black budgets. These are budgets that are generated off the books. And the reason that that's the central defining element that makes the deep state is that it excludes the deep state from the control of the entities that the founders decided would be involved in checks and balances. In other words, the Congress has control over the budget of the CIA, but only the official budget. It doesn't know where the black budget is. It's not written down anywhere that Congress can access it. Likewise with the courts. So there are lots of ways that a clandestine organization can generate a black budget. Having done so, it becomes a special problem. So if you imagine Bobby Kennedy ascends to the office of the director of the Central Intelligence Agency, and he says, all right, I want to know how this agency really works. What he's going to get is a list of all the stuff that's on the books, and he's not going to get a list of the things that aren't on the books.
Don't you think he already knows that?
Well,
Don't you think he already knows that, where he knows in order to get in, he's going to have to okay, so let me ask you this. Who do you think has studied the CIA, the structure of it, in the last 60 years more than Bobby Kennedy?
Oh, I don't think anybody has. But my point is, where do you want Bobby Kennedy in order to be able to use that knowledge in order to find out what's really going on and what influence it's having on the direction of our system? I wouldn't want him in the director's office of the CIA. I would be much happier to see him in the Attorney General's office, which also I would point out, as much as director of the CIA has a nice poetic ring to it in light of what many of us suspect the CIA has been involved in, the AG's office also has a nice poetic ring to it because his father was in that office. So it does close a loop, and it allows us to, in principle, fix this wound that the country has suffered under since the early 60s.
So why do you think the deep state's not going to have control over AG versus him at CIA?
Well, first of all, they will attempt to control him wherever he is. That's the nature of the beast. But at least in the office of the Attorney General, he has tools that he can utilize. I would also point out one other thing about the problem with the idea of putting him in charge of the CIA. Because of the domestic versus international division between the FBI and the CIA, it's not obvious to me that the CIA director has the right powers to investigate what the CIA has been doing. Yes, in principle, he can ask the agency to investigate itself, but, I'm concerned about the FBI, but it seems to me that formally speaking, the FBI actually has more power to ask what the CIA has been doing domestically than the director of the CIA necessarily does.
So which one of them could go investigate Fauci?
Well, that's the question. There's a third possibility here.
What's that?
The third possibility would be something like Health and Human Services. And there's, to me personally, as much as I think we have two giant problems for which Bobby Kennedy is the right answer, and it's not obvious how you put him in a position to do both. One of those giant problems is that the deep state plays an unknown role in our movement through history. And the other is the COVID crisis, which involved numerous tremendous crimes that had global impacts and are having global impacts still. And so when I started diving into the reality of COVID, looking at the COVID origins, looking at the repurposed drugs that were demonized so people would not use them, looking at the so-called vaccines and the harms that came from them, my thought was, it's an interesting story, but the most important thing about the COVID story is that it diagnoses the whole system. If you look at all of the ways that the various elements of the universities, the newspapers, government itself, the international public health apparatus.
Yeah.
If you look at the failure of all of those elements with respect to COVID, you see a description of the entire system. So I think we need to use what happened with COVID in order to fix our system. We need to use it to tell us where the problems are. And at the moment, we're not on track to do that because both the Democrats and the Republicans are interested in moving past COVID. So Bobby would be a very good person to do that because he knows that material backwards and forwards.
I think for me, what's that, Rob? What you got up there? Is it, okay, that's from the earlier, yeah. So I think for me, from a story standpoint and thinking he's got to choose his enemies wisely, he has an enemy to choose between Fauci or an enemy to choose between what the CIA did to practically destroy his family. The Kennedys don't have the kind of power they had 60 years ago. So if they don't kill his father and they don't kill his uncle, John would have been a two-term president. Bobby would have been a two-term president. Of course, we're talking nepotism. We're not, 16 years the Kennedys would have been running the world, which one can make an argument whether that's a good thing or a bad thing. But regardless, that's a aspirational thing for a family, and one has to plot a family that can put a legacy like that all the way from the top with the father, Joseph, who also wanted to run for president, but he made a mistake with Chamberlain and some of the stuff with, Germany and some of the comments he made. But if I were to ask myself who he would have rather choose as an enemy, is it the CIA or Fauci? I think he goes CIA. I think he goes that direction. And by the way, for Trump to decide to bring somebody out and appoint a position like the director of CIA to Bobby, oh my God. Legacy-wise, I can see the AG is like, hey, you have the same job as your father. But you ever seen a movie, Count of Monte Cristo, or you ever read the book, Count of Monte Cristo?
I haven't.
Oh my God. You have to watch it.
All right, I'm going right now.
Let me tell you, you have to watch it. You know why? Because the whole republic that you're talking about, this is a story, the Count of Monte Cristo. I want to say Jim Caviezel is in it. Is it Jim Caviezel? Go a little lower, Rob. It is Jim Caviezel, right? He plays Edmund Dante. And his best friend, Fernand, in a movie, played by Guy Pearce and Henry Cavill. It's just a great movie. Guy ends up, I don't want to ruin it for you, but the whole thing is Jim goes away to jail because guy is trying to get rid of him because he's in love with his girl. Some event happens. They're best friends. He goes to jail, and everybody forgets about him. Makes the greatest comeback. And when he makes a comeback, he puts a party together and invites everybody. His friend, his ex, his lover, everybody. And they can't believe how powerful he is now. I think if Bobby became the director of CIA and he had that job and Trump appointed him as a job like that heavyweight of a job, I mean, there is a part of that it may go down as one of the great, like imagine if Bobby's the one that comes out and announces to the world, based on all the investigation that took him 2 years to do at the CIA, he found out who killed. Whoever produces that movie, that is the kind of a movie that everybody and their mothers is gonna watch it and see what happened there. I just think the story is big, and I don't know what's gonna happen. We may just even be talking right now. None of this may be on the table because you don't know what he had negotiated with Trump. Maybe negotiate. He went a little bit later, so maybe they were still negotiating on what some of the stuff that was gonna say. But we'll see what he's gonna be doing. We'll see what he's gonna be doing with this.
Yeah, it's exciting. I've been using the analogy of Odysseus returning at the end of the Odyssey to clean things up, and that is a more complicated parallel in light of Bobby suspending his campaign. But nonetheless, I still think that's who he is.
So for those of you guys that are watching this, let me tell you, these USA hats, they don't stay on the shelf. Every time we launch these, they go in a heartbeat. And by the way, if you're happy about Bobby Kennedy coming out and talking about the endorsement and the support and the corruption on the DNC side, and you love America, you love USA, you may not be somebody that wants to wear some other stuff, but you want to wear a hat that says USA and future looks bright, go to the QR code or go to vtmerch.com, order the USA gear and sport it, especially between now and November 5th. These are exciting times. Again, united.
So if you like this clip and you want to watch another one, click right here. And if you want to watch the entire podcast, click right here.